How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Beis, Daf 32, of Masechta Shevuos. Friends, your friends, Masechta Shevuos, Daf Lamed Beis. I hope I have enough juice in my phone, because I basically just, like in the camera thingy, so I just recorded the previous Daf. Hopefully I juiced it up enough in between. And hopefully I have enough juice in my brain. Oh my gosh. Also not an easy daf. Yeah, yesterday took more koiches than I expected. Akoponim. Today we're going to learn a new Mishnah. And hopefully get up to the next Mishnah. Talks about kind of the details about Shevuos Ha'edus. What does it actually look like? And things like that. So let's do it. Exciting stuff. Okay, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis says the Mishnah Shevuos Ha'edus Keitzad. So how goes Shevuos Ha'edus? How does it work? Amr l'Shnaim. So I don't know, Shimon lent Ruvain $100, okay, and Levi and Yehuda witnessed it. So Shimon says to Levi and Yehuda, he says, Bo ve'aiduni, no, Levi, Yehuda, come, can you testify for me? And that way I can recoup my $100. Shvuah she'ein anu yodin l'cha'edus. And they say, Shvuah, that we don't know any testimony. So now, the shaila is, the Mishnah doesn't say whose opinion this is. Is it Reb Meir's opinion? Is it the Rabbanon's opinion? So, I mean, generally speaking, I guess, if it doesn't say otherwise, I guess by default, it would be the Chacham, be the rabbis. The thing is, like, there is something enticing to want to say that this is Taka Reb Meir's opinion. Tosfos Taka talks about it. Remember, maybe that might be the name of a new series. Tosfos Taka talks about it. Al Kaponim. So, Ashley says she tried to be so quiet so that she wouldn't be caught and be a celebrity on Babylon Talmud, but she failed. Al Kaponim. So Tosfos Taka talks about it. Is this Reb Meir's opinion? Is it the Chacham's opinion? In the end, I think Taka makes sense to say that it's actually the Chacham's opinion. So if it's the Chacham's opinion, the Chacham, of course, say, as we learned in yesterday's Mishnah, or 2 days ago's Mishnah, that according to the Chachamim, Shevuos Ha'edus has to happen in Bezdin, right? Whether it's mipiatzma, whether it's mipiachem, which would mean that if we're saying that this Mishnah is the Chachamim, so then that means that this is taking place in Bezdin, okay? So they say, Shevuah she'ein anu yodin licha edus, and they swear in Bezdin that they don't know any testimony. Osha amrlo ein anu yodin licha edus, or they said to him, right? They say to Shimon, without swearing, they simply say, we don't know anything. Mashbe'ani aleichem, and then Shimon says to them, I swear you. Vamu amen, and they said amen. Hare elu chayovin. So then they are chayovin. The reason why it's nice to say that it's Reb Meir, because then that's the point of like why it's like saying amen, because amen makes it keilu like it's mipiatzmo, and therefore it can be outside of Bezdin. But I think it's still better to say it's the Chacham and it's happening in Bezdin. Tosfos says that the reason why we're saying amen is just as like a shorthand way. Anyways, this is happening in Bezdin. Okay. Fine. So in both scenarios, whether they say Shevuah she'ein anu yodin l'cha'edus, or whether they say ein anu yodin l'cha'edus mushbani aleichem v'amu amen, either way they're b'chayavin. Hishbia aleim chomesh paimim chutz lebezdin. Now, if he was mashbia upon them 5 times outside of Bezdin, and I guess that they said amen, I guess outside of Bezdin. Uvo lebezdin, and they came to Bezdin, or would it even matter? Well, the point is that just that they were, that there was an actual shvuah happening outside of Bezdin. So I guess like if it was outside of Bezdin and all they said was kilu ein anu yodin l'cha'edus, and he says mashbi'ani aleichem, and they just reiterated ein anu yodin l'cha'edus, would that actually technically be considered a shvuah? I don't know. But definitely if they said amen, it would be considered a shvuah. So let's just go with that. So again, Ishbi Aleim Chomesh Paimim It's a little bit of there's a lot of detail in this Mishnah, as if you haven't picked up already. Is there a mayor? Is it the Chachamim? Why is it like this? Why is it like that? What exactly are they saying? What aren't they saying? Where exactly are they? It's like a lot of details. So anyways, I'm going to go with Hishbiya Aleim Chamish Paim Chutz LeBezdin. So outside of Bezdin, Shimon says to them 5 times, come testify for me. They say, Einon Yodin Chaedu, says Mashbiya Ani Aleichem, and they say Amen. This happens 5 times. Uvo LeBezdin, they come to Bezdin, V'hodu, and finally once they get to Bezdin, they admit that they taka do no testimony. Potter, because the first 5 times happen outside of Bezdin. They come to Bezdin, they say, yeah, we know testimony. Okay, so they know testimony. Kafru, but if when they get to Bezdin, they continue to deny knowing any testimony, and then later on they admit it, chayav and akolachas vachas, they are chayav for each of those 5 times that they swore outside of Bezdin. They are chayav, right? They came to Bezdin, they continue to deny it, and then they later admit it, so then they're going to be chayav for all 5 from outside of Bezdin. However, if Shimon had them swear 5 times in Bezdin, right? So he says, come, right? So they say, Einon Yodin Chaedos, he says, Mashbiya Ani Aleichem, they say, Amen, in Bezdin, and this happens 5 times. V'kafru, and they denied it, Einon Chayovin Ella Achas. They're only chayav once, not 5 times. So Rabbi Shimon says, Matam, how come? Because in Bezdin they can't admit it anymore. Because there's a concept of Kem Chehigid Shuv in Chozer Umagid. Once a person says something in Bezdin, they can't take it back. They can't turn around 180. So therefore, when they're outside of Bezdin, every time they swore, they could have said, you know what, we do know what testimony. It's not too late. They could have always changed it after the fact. So each time they continued to swear, they were like adding on another layer. However, in Bezdin, once they swear that they don't know testimony, they can't then turn around and say that they do know testimony. So after that first denial, there's really nothing more to talk about, so they're only going to be chayav once, right? It's too late to make any changes. Okay. Kafru shnein ke'echod. Now, if both witnesses, Levi and Yehuda, denied having any knowledge of the events, tzazamen, together, they testified together, they denied together, shnein chayav, so they are both chayav a korban Shevuos Eidus. Boze achar zeh, one after the other. Harishan chayav hasheni potter. So the first one is going to be chayav, and the second one is going to be potter. Right, so the first, so there were 2 witnesses, right? Levi and Yehuda. So when Levi denies knowing any testimony, so he's going to be chayav for that. Now Yehuda is going to be potter because he's left alone and he really can't make a difference anyways. So he's potter. Meaning, because once Levi denies it, then there's only 1 witness left, and that's Yehuda. And Yehuda's and 1 witness can't make anybody pay for anything, so therefore he's going to be potter for his denial. If, let's say, Levi denies any knowledge and Yehuda admits knowledge, so then the one who admits is potter, the one who denies is going to be chayav. If there were 2 groups of witnesses, and the first one denied any knowledge, and then afterwards the second one denied any knowledge, they are both chayavos. Because the testimony could have worked with either one, so therefore they are both groups will be chayav a korban. Wow. Okay, that was the Mishnah. I feel like this is going to be another long daf. And like my head is like a little drained and there's not so much battery in the phone, so we'll see. And Shabbos is coming in like less than an hour. So we'll see how far we get. I might have to wrap this up maybe on Sunday or something. We'll see. Amar Shmuel, says the Gemara, says Shmuel, Ra'u sherotz achrein. If Levi and Yehuda see that Shimon is running after them, Amrulo, they say to Shimon, Ma ato rotz achreinu. Shimon, why are you running after? Why are you chasing after us? Shevuos she'en anu yodin l'cho. We swear that we don't know any testimony for you. Pturin. They're pturin. Ad sheyishmu mi piv, until they hear from his, until they hear him say, Bo Vayidun, which is actually interesting because this implies that it's taka outside of business, which might be like Rav Meir. I know, it's like a lot of, okay, maybe it's taka like Rav Meir. I don't know, it's a lot, it's kind of, maybe you could say this is happening in Bezdin. I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, it's a little bit tricky to know in this sugya of like, who's it? Right? I mean, by default it would be the Chachamim, but it's just like, feels like tricky because the Chachamim say it has to happen in Bezdin, and there are like definitely different things that would make you think that things are happening outside of Bezdin. So, anyways, yeah, I'm sure that there are all sorts of ways that we can explain it according to the Chacham, whether it's in Bezdin or maybe this could be talking about maybe outside of Bezdin, but then maybe in Bezdin they denied it, so maybe chayav kol achas v'achas, whatever it is. But if you would say everyone, whether you're Rameh, whether you say you're Chachamim, you're chayav for Shevuos Eidos if you fill the criteria. This would not be fulfilling the criteria. Until they hear Shimon say to them, Bo'u v'ha'iduni. Ma'ikamash Montanina. Fact the Gemara, what is Shmuel teaching us? We learn in a Mishnah, I think in Shevuos HaPikodin. No, here in Shevuos HaEdus. Shilach biyad avdo, that if Shimon doesn't approach Levi and Yehuda directly, but rather he sends his Eved, or Shomer Loen Hanitba, or Ruvain, Taka says to Levi and Yehuda, Mashbi'a ani aleichem, I'm mashbi'a you, Shematim Yodin lo edus, that if you know testimony for Shimon, shetabov ta'idu, go testify for him. Hare elu p'turim, achishmu pi hatoveh. Levi and Yehuda are going to be p'turim because they have to hear directly from Shimon. Not from Reuven, not from Shimon's Eved, but from Shimon himself. So we already see that Levi and Yehuda have to be requested by Shimon himself, Bo'u v'ha'iduni. So we already know Shmuel's case of he's chasing after them and they say, Shevuos she'en anu yodin l'cho. He never said Bo'u v'ha'iduni. Of course, they are Pturin, Ratz, Achrein, it's Tzrichalei, to which the Gemara answers, no, we do need Shmuel to teach us that when he's chasing after them, they are Pturin, because Sagadat Chamina may have thought, since he's chasing after them, Kimando Omer Lahu Dami, maybe his chasing after them is Keilu, he's basically saying, come testify for Keilu. Why is Shimon chasing after Levi and Yehuda? It's basically as if, can use our brains. It's as if he's basically saying, hey, guys, come testify. Why else is he chasing after them? Kamash Malan. So therefore, Shmuel has come to teach that even so, he must say, Bo'u v'ha'iduni. Chasing after them is not enough. V'ha'nami tanina. But even so, this also we learn in our own very Mishnah. Shevuos HaEdus case said, how does Shevuos HaEdus work? Amr la'edim, if Shimon says to Levi and Yehuda, Bo v'ayiduni shvua chule. Our Mishnah says, how does Shevuos HaEdus work? Shimon says to Levi and Yehuda, Bo v'ayiduni. So we see from our Mishnah that saying Bo v'ayiduni is key. And so long as you don't say Bo v'ayiduni, it's not Shevuos HaEdus. I don't care if you're running, walking, dancing, whatever it is. Omar in, lo Omar lo. As the Mishnah is saying, Omar Bo v'ayiduni. If he says it, then we have what to talk about in terms of Shevuos HaEdus. If he doesn't say it, it's a non-starter. Omar lav davka. And for the Gemara, meh. I know it says in the Mishnah, Omar Bo v'ayiduni. It's not to be taken literally. And I'll prove it. to you that it's not to be taken literally. Because if you disagree, well then, what are you going to do about the following case? By Shevuos HaPikorin it says, Shevuos HaPikorin case, that how does Shevuos HaPikorin work? Amar lo, Shimon goes to Ruvain's house, and he says, give me back my book. So Achinami, Amar in lo, Amar lo. So would you say there also, hey, but it says Amar. Shimon has to first say to Ruvain, give me back my book. If Shimon doesn't first say to Ruvain, give me back my book, so then even Ruvain swearing that he doesn't have it is irrelevant. It's Shimon first has to say, give me back my book. Amar ini lo, Amar lo. But v'kichesh ba'mito, koldu. But the pasuk says v'kichesh ba'mito. Simply that Ruvain has to deny it. That's all you need. You don't need Shimon to first say, give me back my book. So, meaning if you want to say, meaning we wanted to say that our Mishnah says, Omar lo boy v'ayidunu. So you see, you have to say it. So you're saying, no, that's not literally. And I'll prove it to you that Omar is not to be taken literally, because we see the same thing by Shevuos HaPikorin. Shimon says to Ruvain, give me back my book. But there, the pasuk says, "V'kichesh b'mito." You don't need anybody to say anything. What we need is for Ruvain to swear that he doesn't have it. That's what's important. So therefore, clearly then, when it says Omar by Shevuos HaPikorin, it's not to be taken literally. And Elo Omar lav davka, Achanami lav davka. And just like by Shevuos HaPikorin, when it says Omar, it's not to be taken literally. So also by Shevuos HaEdus, when it says Omar, it is not to be taken literally. And therefore, I can make the argument that if Shimon is chasing after Levi and Yehuda, he doesn't necessarily need to say Bo Vayiduni. So Kamash Milan Shmuel, that actually he does. So Hai Mai Yom Pishlama Omar Docha Davko, to which the Gemara says, I'm not so convinced. Meaning you're trying to tell me that, okay, Enochinami, by Shevuos HaPikorin it says Omar and it's not to be taken literally. But you're telling me that because it's not to be taken literally by Shevuos HaPikorin, therefore it's not to be taken literally by Shevuos HaEdus. But if that's the case, then why write it at all? I understand, Bishlama makes sense. Omar duhacha davka, if you say Omar here in our case is to be taken literally. That right, that Shimon Davka has to say Bo Vayiduni. And by Shevuos HaPikorin, it is not to be taken literally. And and for consistency reasons, it had to be written over here, Omar Bo Vayiduni. And so we say Omar also by Shevuos HaPikorin just to keep things consistent. But Omar lo Omar dohasam davka v'lo Omar dohacha davka. But if you say that by Shevuos HaPikorin it says Omar, not to be taken literally. By Shevuos HaEdus it says Omar, also not to be taken literally. So Omar Lomali. So why waste the ink? Why say Omar in both places if it's not actually to be taken literally? Lomali lemisnei. So therefore, if both are not literally, then why write it at all? So therefore, the Gemara wants to argue that actually we'll say that Omar here by Shevuos HaEdus is to be taken literally, and not by Shevuos HaPikorin, but by Shevuos HaPikorin just for consistency. And therefore, if Omar here is to be taken literally, then what is the chiddush of Shmuel? Because if Omar is to be taken literally, then our Mishnah is saying you have to say Bari Vayiduni. So what's the chiddush of Shmuel? Well, Dima Orcha de Milsa Kamash Milan. Well, you could say maybe the Mishnah was just talking about the common case. The common case would be where Shimon says to Levi and Yehuda, come and testify. Not to say that he has to say it. But so why does it say Omar? Because that's the common case. So that Shimon says to Levi and Yehuda, hey, come and testify. But it may not necessarily be literally, and therefore Shmuel has come to say that actually he does have to say this to them. And even if he's chasing after them and they say Shevuos that would not be enough. He has to say Bo Va'iduni. Tani Kavasi de Shmuel. We talk about Braisa supporting Shmuel. Ra'u Shebo Achrein. If Levi and Yehuda saw that Shimon was coming after them, Amrulo, and they said to him, Ma'ataba Achareinu, why are you coming after us? Shevuos she'eino yodin l'cha'edos. We swear that we don't know any testimony for you. Edus l'cha'edos Pturin. They are Pturin because he didn't say Bo Va'iduni. V'im b'fikorin chayavim. However, by Pikadin, they would be chayiv, because by Pikadin, Shimon does not need to say, come in and testify. It does not need to say, "Ten li pikad sheish b'yochla," give me my book. Okay, Givaldi. Hishbi alein chamisha paimim v'chulei. Now the Mishnah talked about if outside of Bezdin they say ein ani yodun cha'edus. He says mashbi ani aleichem, and they say amen. And this happens outside of Bezdin 5 times, and they come to Bezdin and they continue to deny it, and then they admit it. They'll be chayav 5 times. Minolon dakfir bebezdin hu de mechayev chutz lebezdin lo mechayev. How do we know that they're davka chayav for the denial that they make in Bezdin, but they're not chayav outside of Bezdin? I.e., they can come to Bezdin and admit it, and then they'll be potter. They'll admit that they know testimony. They'll be potter. They'll give testimony in Bezdin. How do we know that we're not chayav for the kfir in Bezdin outside? We're not chayav for the kfir outside of Bezdin. We're chayav for the kfir in Bezdin. So again, the Pasuk says, "Im lo yagid v'nosa avono." That if the witness lo yagid, if he doesn't tell v'nosa avono, we've referenced this I think already the past 2 days maybe. Lo amarti l'cha ela b'makom she'ilu magid zeh mischayev zeh mamon. That we're talking about that he makes a shvua in Shevuos ha'edus is in a place she'ilu yagid, that if he were to tell, it will have real implications because he'll be mechayev Ruvain money. Outside of Bezdin, he can't be mechayev anybody anything. In Bezdin, where if he actually gives his testimony, he could actually be mechayev Ruvain money. That is where the Shevuos ha'edus needs to take place. Omar le Rav Papa Abai says, Rav Papa Abai so iochi ema shvua gufa bebezdin in v'shlo bebezdin lo. So suggests Rav Papa Abai, if that, because what are we saying? We're saying he swears 5 times outside of Bezdin, and then he denies in Bezdin, and now he's chayav 5 times, implying that the shvuas that he did outside of Bezdin had some kind of meaning, right? Had some kind of made some kind of difference. You're chayav for them. You would, if you came to Bezdin, you admitted it that you know testimony, then you would be off the hook for them. But if you continue to deny in Bezdin, you're going to be chayav for each one of those swears that you did outside of Bezdin. So clearly there is some kind of meaning, maybe you could say, to or significance to the swears outside of Bezdin. But if we're saying lo yagid v'nosa avono, and yagid means inside Bezdin where haggadah matters, well, why are we saying it's only the kfir? It should be the shvuas as well. So lo sagadai techno detani, because we learned in the Brisa le'achas l'chayv kol achas v'achas, that the pasuk says v'yaki yeshem le'achas me'ele. So le'achas means that he's chayiv on each and every one. Now where is that talking? Where would he be chayiv for each and every one? As we saw in the Mishnah, that in Bezdin he would not be chayiv for each of his swears, because v'atanan v'hishbiya alein chamisha pa'im bifnei Bezdin v'kafru ein chayivin ela achas. That we said that if they swore 5 times in Bezdin and denied it, they'd only be chayiv once. Rabbi Shimon says, Matam, how come? Because we said, right, that once already they denied it in Bezdin, and they swore in Bezdin, they wouldn't be able to change their argument. So they'd only be chayiv once even if they swore 5 times in Bezdin, they'd only be chayiv once. So where would you be chayiv 5 times? Rather, it must be that you can swear outside of Bezdin, but you would have to then go to inside Bezdin and deny it, and at that point you would be chayiv for the 5 shvuas outside of Bezdin. Said the Mishnah, Kafu shnein ka'achas chayavin. If they both denied it, tzazamin, right? Both of them said either ein anu yodin l'cha'edus or ein ani yodei l'cha'edus. I don't know. Yeah, I assume that if you're just saying it's like if each one is denying individually, I imagine that, I don't know, ein anu yodin. Maybe they are saying Shevuos ein anu yodin l'cha'edus. Maybe they both say it at the same time. Tzazamin, right? It says shnein ke'echos. Maybe mamash they're both together, Levi and Yehuda, and they say tzazamin Shevuos ein anu yodin l'cha'edus. But how could they mamash say it literally at the same time, start at the same instant, end at the same instant? So Rav Chisda Amari Rav Yosei Aglili the Omer Efshel Tzamtzin. So Rav Chisda will taka this Mishnah. This is the opinion of Rav Yosei Aglili. Taka says that you can mamish synchronize you can mamish synchronize. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, afilu teim rabbanon. It says of Yochanan, you can even say it's like the opinion of the rabbis who say that, yeah, you can't mamish synchronize. However, that they both denied within Toch K'dei Dibur. Let's go further for a second. Says Rav Acha midifti Lavina, Michdei Toch K'dei Dibur dami kama. How long is Toch K'dei Dibur? K'dei shelas tam l'ra. The amount of time that it asked a Talmud to say shalom to his Rebbe, shalom alecha Rebbe. The amount of time that it says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, those 6 words, tuva ave, it's too much time. So the point is, Toch K'dei Dibur is shalom alecha Rebbe. That is how long Toch K'dei Dibur takes. A second, maybe 2 seconds, right? So we're saying, how could it be that both Levi and Yehuda, meaning Levi says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, Yehuda then says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, within the amount of time it says Shalom Alecha Rebbe. They have to say 12 words within the amount of time that it takes to say 3 words. It's just too much. So, and for the Gemara, so Ravina responds to Rav Acha midifti, Kol echad ve'echad toch k'dei dibur shel chaver. No, what it means according to the Chachamim is that Levi says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, and within Toch K'dei Dibur, basically immediately afterwards, Yehuda then says, Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus. So it's not that they're both saying that phrase, one after the other, within the amount of time that it says to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe, within that tiny window. No, it's that one of them says it, and then within that tiny window, the next one starts saying his phrase. Okay. Harishan Chayiv Vasheni Potter. Okay. So we said that, okay. Wait, what do we say? So if it's not Toch K'dei Dibur, if it's not Sezamen, but Levi says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, and then sometime later, Yehuda says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, but it wasn't within Toch K'dei Dibur. It was considered separately. Well, then Levi is going to be chayiv, because at the time that he made his denial, both he, Levi, and Yehuda could have testified on Shimon's behalf, and Levi is denying that he knows he's falsely denying that he doesn't know anything. So he's going to be chayiv a Shevuos edus. However, Yehuda, by the time he makes his shvuah, Levi had already denied knowing anything, which means that Yehuda is left alone at this point. He's just one witness. He can't accomplish anything anyways. One witness can't make anybody pay. He's not going to be able to make Reuven pay anything. So therefore, Yehuda is who we're talking about now. So Yehuda is going to be potter because, even if he would have said, I do know something, he would have been useless anyways because he's just one aid. So Levi is going to be chayiv, but Yehuda is going to be potter. Well, this Mishnah there then seems to be unlike Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. The Tana is learned by Mashbia aid echad potter. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon chayiv. When it comes to being mashbia in aid echad, so Tanakama says potter, whereas Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says chayiv. So basically, Levi says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha edus, and we're saying Levi is chayiv, but we're saying Yehuda is potter. Now, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon would say, well, meaning we're saying why is Yehuda potter? Well, because he's just an aid echad, and anyways he can't do anything. But Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says you can be mashbia in aid echad, and he would be chayiv. So Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon would say that Yehuda could also be chayiv, whereas the Tanakama says Yehuda is potter. Now the Gemara says, let's say that the machlokus between the Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon is the following: to my sover eid echad ki asa l'shvuah udeka asa, u'may sover eid echad ki asa l'mamona ka asa. Let's say that the machlokus between the Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon is: can one witness actually make Reuven pay Shimon? So after Levi swears that he doesn't know anything, and all you're left with is Yehuda, would Yehuda be able to actually make Reuven pay Shimon? So let's say that the Tanakama says no, and therefore Yehuda is, how about I didn't say Levi? Yehuda, Therefore, Yehuda is Pater. After Levi denied it, only Yehuda is left. And Tanakama says Yehuda is unable to make Ruvain pay Shimon. So Tanakama says he's Pater for Shevuos Eidos. Whereas Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon says that actually Yehuda can make Ruvain pay Shimon, and therefore he's chayiv. Because he when he denied it, he alone could have made Ruvain pay. So therefore by denying, he's chayiv. But v'tizbra, how can you say that is the machlok? So Amar Abaye says, and now Abaye is going to say 5 things right now that we're going to go through one at a time afterwards and explain each one. But Abaye says, Hakomodim be'ed sota, everybody agrees by one witness by a sota, Hakomodim be'edei sota, and everybody agrees by 2 witnesses by a sota. Machlokes be'edei sota, and there's also a machlokes when it comes to 2 witnesses by a sota. Hakomodim be'ed echod, everyone agrees by an eid echod. Hakomodim be'ed echod shegendo chashud al shvua, and everyone also agrees by an eid echod where his opponent, where whatever the opponent in the case is chashud al shvua, we don't trust him to swear. We're going to go through each of these cases individually and explain them. What is important for now, though, is to know that when we say machlokes be'edei sota, that machlokes be'edei sota is the same machlokas between the Chacham and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon here, and it is not about whether one witness can make Ruvain pay Shimon. Okay, so and it's the same machlokas between Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon and the Chacham. Basically, and we're going to go through this now, and it'll make sense after we explain it. But the point is, basically, we wanted to say that the machlokas between Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon and the Chacham is: can one witness be mechayiv Ruvain to pay Shimon? It turns out that's not the machlokas between the Chacham and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Rather, Ela duchuli alma eid echad ki asi l'shvua ka'asi. Rather, says the Gemara, and it's a little bit of a funny thing because the Gemara is basically rejecting the suggestion without really explaining why. We have to go weiter in order to explain why. However, rest assured that the machlokas is not about whether one witness can be mechayiv Ruvain to pay Shimon. Rather, says the Gemara, and this is going to be apparent in Abat when we break down Abaye's statement. This is what the machlokas is between the Chacham and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. It is el dechuli alma ed echad kasi l'shvu ka'asi. Look, everybody agrees. Right? The pasuk says apishnayim edim or pishlosha edim. Right? You have to have at least 2 witnesses. Of course, we know that. One witness, though, what it can accomplish is it can be mechayiv shvu. If Yehuda shows up in court and says, yes, I can testify that Ruvain owes Shimon $100, Ruvain won't have to pay Shimon $100, but he will have to swear. Everyone agrees one witness can be mechayev shvua. The question is, what's the significance of that? The machlokas between Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon is my sover davar agorim l'mamen kimaman dami u'may sover lav kimaman dami. Here's the thing: if Yehuda shows up in court, he cannot make Ruvain pay Shimon, but he can make Ruvain swear that he does not owe Shimon money. Right? Shimon's saying, Ruvain, you owe me $100. Ruvain is saying, no, I don't. So then Yehuda can make Ruvain swear that he's telling the truth. And you know what? Ruvain might prefer not to swear and instead say, Shimon, I owe you $100. Instead of swearing, he'll just admit it. So that's the thing. Yehuda can't make Ruvain pay Shimon, but he can force Ruvain to swear that he's telling the truth, that he does not owe Shimon money. And what that might lead to is Ruvain deciding he'd rather just admit it rather than swear. Right? It's worth $100 just to pay rather than falsely swear. So the question is, how significant is it that while Yehuda can't make Ruvain pay Shimon, he can make Ruvain swear, which can ultimately lead to Ruvain saying, you know what, it's not worth it, I'll just pay him, and ultimately lead to Shimon getting paid. Even though Yehuda showing up can't directly force Ruvain to pay Shimon, it can cause Ruvain to pay Shimon, because it will force Reuven to have to swear, and Reuven might decide, you know what, I'd actually rather just pay. So it's a davar gorim l'mammon. That while Yehuda isn't directly making Reuven pay Shimon, he's gorim l'mammon. He might cause Reuven to pay Shimon by deciding that he'd rather pay rather than swear. So the machlokas is davar gorim l'mammon ki mammon damayonat. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says yes. Davar gorim l'mammon. Yehuda is causing Reuven to decide to pay Shimon instead of swearing. Is ki mammon, is considered like mammon, and therefore by Yehuda saying Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha'edus, it's considered like he's depriving Shimon of money, and therefore he's chayiv for Shevuos ha'edus. Whereas the Tanna Kama says it's not considered like mammon, and therefore, sure, Yehuda can make Reuven swear, but that's different than making Reuven pay. And if Yehuda says Shevuos she'ein anu yodin cha'edus, he's going to be potter for that because even if he shows up, he's not actually causing any payment. Gufa Amar Abaye. Now Abaye had said these 5 statements, and we're going to go through each one by one. Hakol modim be'ed sota. First, we're going to list the list again, and then we're going to go through one by one. Everyone agrees by one witness by sota. Hakol modim be'ed sota, and everybody also agrees when it comes to 2 witnesses by a sota. Umachlokas be'ed sota, and there's also machlokas when it comes to 2 witnesses by a sota, which is going to be the machlokas between Tanna Kama and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Hakol modim be'ed echad. Everyone agrees by an eid echad. V'hakol modim be'ed shekenegdo chashad hashvuah, and everybody agrees also when the opponent in the case is not trusted to make a shvuah. Again, we're going to go through all of these cases. Hakol modim be'ed sota. Everybody agrees when it comes to one witness by a sota. Shechayev be'ed tuma drachmana hemne dichsev ve'ed ein ba kol sheyesh ba. So by sota, if we remember, I actually didn't remember, I had to get a refresher on it. It was always a little bit confusing to me because I know that by sota, one witness works for something, but I get confused about what exactly it works for. Here's what it works for. So you have a husband who suspects that his wife is having an affair with a guy. So now the husband gets 2 witnesses and he warns his wife, I don't want you to be with this guy. So those are 2 witnesses about the kinoi, about the warning. And now you have 2 other witnesses who come and testify. We saw that his wife was secluded with this guy. We don't know what they did in the room, but they were alone in a room together. That is a de stira, 2 witnesses testifying that they were secluded in a room together, alone. And then, what happens if you have one witness who says, I saw that the mamish had biyah, the mamish had an affair? Now, it's not 2 witnesses, it's 1 witness. So after all of this, after the Eidei Kinoi, after the Eidei Stira, 1 witness is enough to be mechayiver to at least lose her ksuba. He won't, at least, based on this 1 witness, he won't have to pay her ksuba. So this 1 witness is able to actually cause, right? If he says Shevuos she'ein yodei lecha eidos, if he swears that he doesn't know any testimony, so he's causing the husband to lose out because now he's going to have to pay her ksuba. So everyone agrees that if there's 1 witness who's able to make the husband exempt from paying the ksuba, if he swears that he doesn't know any testimony, he would have to bring a korban Shevuos ha'edus. So again, hakol modim be'ed sota, when it comes to the 1 witness by sota shechayev, that he would be chayev a korban Shevuos ha'edus be'ed tuma, when it comes to the 1 witness who says that she mamish had an affair, derachmana heimne, because the Torah believes him, dichsev ve'ed ein ba. Of course, whenever it says aid is 2, unless it says aid echad. Right? What does it say? Lo yakum eid echad ba'ish, right? The Torah says 1 witness is not enough, implying that if we're talking about 1 witness, it'll be explicit about eid echad. But by default, if it says eid, it's actually referring to 2 witnesses. So when it says ve'eid ein ba, there weren't 2 witnesses, kol sheyesh ba, rather it was only 1 witness. So 1 witness is enough to make her lose her ksuba. V'akol modim be'eidei sota, shepotter, and everybody also agrees by Eidei Sota that they are potter be'edei kinur they have a gorim legorim. So everyone agrees that by the Eidei Kinoi, if they deny knowing anything, they are going to be potter, because ultimately they're not, the Eidei Kinoi, they're just saying, we saw that he warned his wife. But that's not going to make anybody have to pay anything. Only if they testify that he warned his wife, and then the Eidei Stira testify that they saw that she was secluded in a room with this guy, which will then lead her to have to drink the Mei Sota, which might then make her decide, you know what, I don't want to drink the Mei Sota, I admit I did it. But that's already twice, at which point he won't have to pay his ksuba, but that's already twice removed. One second. Let me see something. That's already twice removed. Right? Meaning, the Eidei Kinoi, they testify, he warned her. Then the Eidei Stira come and testify, we saw that she was secluded in a room. Then she'll have to drink the Mei Sota, and then maybe she'll say, I don't want to drink it, I admit it, and then she'll lose her ksuba. So everyone agrees that if the Eidei Kinoi, the witnesses about the warning, swear that they don't know anything, they will be potter because they aren't directly causing any financial loss, nor are they even causing any financial loss. They're like causing that, it's a gorim, the gorim. Their testimony could then cause the Eidei Stira to testify, which could then cause her to have to swear to drink the Mei Sota, and she might choose to just admit it, and then she'll lose her ksuba, but it's twice removed, therefore everyone agrees that they will be potter. Umachlokes be'edei sota, and there's a machlokes when it comes to Eidei Sota. Marsovar, where am I? Okay, that's talking about the Eidei Stira. Marsovar davar agorim l'mamon kimamon dami v'chayav, u'marsovar lav kimamon dami u'fater. Right? And there's this machlokes, like we had, right? The machlokes in the Chacham and Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon by the Eidei Stira, that if they say that they, right, the witnesses who saw that she was secluded with the guy, if they swear that they don't know testimony, so this is the machlokes. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon would say that they're chayiv, because even though they aren't directly being them testifying that she was secluded in the room with the guy isn't going to make her lose her ksuba, but it will make her have to drink the Mei Sota, which then might lead to her saying, forget it, I don't want to drink it, I admit it, and she'll lose her ksuba. So that's a davar agorem lemamun, and Reb Shimon would say that it's kimamon dami, and therefore they would be chayiv if they swear that they don't know any testimony. Whereas the Chacham say davar agorem lemamun lav kimamon dami, and therefore they would be potter if they swear that they don't know any testimony. Hakol modim b'shekenegdo choshur ala shvuah. Okay, now moving on to the case where everyone agrees when the opponent is not trusted to swear. So this is talking about a case where, so Shimon lent Reuven $100, right? And we say that Shimon now goes to Yehuda, just to keep all the everything consistent with how we've been saying them. Shimon goes to Yehuda, and he says, Yehuda, come testify for me. And he swears that he doesn't know any testimony. So now, we had said at best, Yehuda could really just make Reuven swear anyway, so it's a gorim limamon. So we said that's a machlokas, davar gorim limamon, kamamon dami, or not. The thing is, what happens in a scenario where Reuven is actually, he's not trusted, you can't trust him to make, he's a thief, whatever, you can't trust him to swear. So if we can't trust Reuven to swear, so then who swears? Well, then that's one of the examples of Nishba and Vinotlin. Shimon swears that he's owed $100, and then Reuven now has to pay him. So therefore, Shimon argues, hey, Yehuda, come testify for me, because Reuven is not trusted to swear, which means I'm just going to swear and collect the money. So your testimony will directly enable me to swear and collect the money. So everyone agrees that Yehuda would be chayiv if he swears that he doesn't know testimony. So again, everyone agrees when right? That Yehuda would be chayiv a korban Shevuos eidos in a scenario where Ruvain is not trusted to swear. So Hakol Modim be'ed. Where am I? Oh, okay. Hakol Modim be'ed echad Reb Abba, and also everybody agrees by the one witness of Reb Abba, which we'll get to after this. Hakol Modim b'shaknegdo chashel al Shevuos. So now to explain the scenario of when b'shaknegdo chashel al Shevuos, when Ruvain is not trusted to swear. The chashid man. Okay, so the Gemara is actually going to discuss this now, exactly who's not trusted. So who is not trusted? So So if you're going to explain like I just explained, that Ruvain is not trusted to swear, and therefore Shimon says to Yehuda, if you just come and testify for me that Ruvain owes me, right? So Shimon says to Yehuda, testify for me that Ruvain owes me 100 zuzes. Have a mishtabayna v'shakilna. Since Ruvain is not trusted to swear, I'm going to swear that I'm owed the money and I'll simply be able to take it. So you are directly causing me a financial loss if you by your swear. But let Yehuda say to Shimon, mi yemer de mishtabas. Who says that you're actually going to swear? Maybe you're a chicken. Maybe you're not going to swear. So it's not like obvious that me coming to Bezdin means that you're necessarily going to get paid. It's dependent on you swearing. Who says you're going to do that? Okay, so Ella could go into rather it's talking about Sheshnei and Chashud. So actually it's talking about where both Ruvain and Shimon are not trusted to swear. So then what happens? The Mamai that we say, so in that scenario, what actually happens is, it goes back to Ruvain. So what happens? Yehuda comes to Bezdin and says that I can testify that Ruvain owes Shimon 100 zuz. Now, because Yehuda is only one witness, Ruvain needs to swear, if he wants to maintain that he doesn't owe the money, so you'd have to swear. The thing is, we can't trust Ruvain. So we say, okay, so Shimon swears, and then he can take it. The thing is, we can't trust Shimon either. Okay, so it goes back to Ruvain. So because Ruvain is unable to swear, he simply has to pay. So in such a scenario, Yehuda is directly, by showing up in court, he would directly be requiring Ruvain to pay, because since nobody can swear, Ruvain directly has to pay. And by swearing that he doesn't know any testimony, he's causing Shimon a loss, and he would be chayiv for that. And also everybody agrees by the Eid Echad of Reb Abba. We've seen this before. Remember the ingit? Ruvain stole an ingot from Shimon. An ingot is I think it's like a hunk of silver. Like a brick of silver, a block of silver. Also, the Kame de Reb Ami. So the case came before Reb Ami, Abba Yosef, Reb Abba Kame, and Reb Abba was sitting before Reb Ami. Ozol Aise Chad Saida, and Shimon shows up with one witness. Let's just, for consistency, let's call him Yehuda. Shimon shows up with Yehuda. Demechtov Chotva Mine, and Yehuda comes and says, yes, I can testify that Ruvain stole an ingot from Shimon. And therefore, he would have to, at best, he could be Mechayev Ruvain a Shevuah that he didn't steal it. But guess what? But there's a twist. What does Ruvain say? Amalei in Chotvi. Ruvain says, yep, I admit, I stole it, but Vididi Chotvi. But technically I didn't steal it, because it's mine. Yeah, I took it, but it's mine. Now, if there were two witnesses that were testifying that Ruvain stole an ingot from Shimon, he can't just say, I stole it, yeah, sure, but it's mine. No, you have two witnesses testifying that he stole it. He can't just get out of it by saying that it's mine. But here we only have one witness. So what do we do? What do we do in this case? Lishalim, lekatrei sada. We can't force Ruvain to pay Shimon because we don't have two witnesses. Two witnesses came and said Ruvain stole from Shimon. Of course, Ruvain would have to pay, but we don't have two witnesses. We only have one. Lifterate, to say that Ruvain is just completely potter. We can't just say Ruvain is completely potter, because after all, Yehuda's here to testify that Ruvain stole an ingot from Shimon. So normally Ruvain would have to swear. he's not just completely potter. Reuven would have to swear. But the thing is, lishtava, in terms of making Reuven swear, came to Amr in chatvi, v'didi chatvi, but he already admitted that he stole it. Havalei gazlan will be like a gazlan. What does it mean he's like a gazlan? It means, how does swearing work? Swearing works is that you swear about what the witness is saying that you did. Meaning, Yehuda comes to court and he says, Reuven stole an ingot from Shimon. So what does Reuven need to swear? I didn't steal an ingot from Shimon. The thing is, he already readily admitted that he stole an ingot from Shimon. That's not the point. The point is that he says that it's his. So Kilu, we can't make Reuven swear because what he would have to swear is that he didn't steal it, but he readily admits that he stole it, just that it's his. So what do we do in this scenario? We can't force him to pay because we don't have two witnesses. We can't just say, okay, Reuven, go home because we do have one witness, but we also can't make him swear because whatever he would swear about, he already admitted to doing, just that he's saying that he didn't do anything wrong because it's his. So I'm going to Rav Abba says, Abba, Avalei, Mechuyev Shvua, V'nyochel Lishava, V'chal Mechuyev Shvua, V'nyochel Lishava Meshalim. Well, Reuven is chayiv to swear because Yehuda is here to testify against him, and he can't swear because what's he going to swear? That he didn't steal it, he stole it, he admitted that he stole it. So therefore, he has to pay because Kol Mechayev Shvua, V'nyochel Lishava, whenever you have somebody who's chayiv to swear but can't, V'nyochel Lishava Meshalim, he's going to have to pay. So everybody agrees that Reuven would have to pay Shimon for the ingot. Omar Rav Papa says, Rav Papa, Akomodim be'ed misa, shu chayiv. Akomodim be'ed misa, shu potter. Everybody agrees by an eid misa that he's chayiv, and by an eid misa that he's potter. What's an eid misa? An eid misa is a witness who can testify that a woman's husband is dead, and therefore she can get remarried. So everybody agrees by this eid misa that if he denies knowing testimony, it makes a Shevuos Eidus that he denies testimony. So everyone agrees that he's chayiv, a korban Shevuos Eidus. Also everybody agrees that in another case he's potter. Everyone agrees that he's potter. That he said to her, he never told Bezdin what he knows, that her husband is still alive, therefore she can't get that her husband's dead, and therefore she can, right, Edemisa, right, that her husband's dead, and therefore she can get remarried. So he told her, but he never told Bezdin. Now, he's potter because it's not the we learn in the Mishnah, Isha she'amar meiz baili, tinosim meiz baili tisyabim, that if a woman says, Eid mi pi eid, right, that kilu, right, if she's saying that she heard that her husband is dead, so she can get remarried, or if she has to do yibum, she'll do yibum. So therefore, since she can just come to Bezdin and say that for herself, so the aid is potter. However, akomodim be'ed misa shu chayiv, but everyone agrees that in a different scenario he'd be chayiv, to lo amr la ladidav lo amr lahu lebezdin, that he never told anybody, in which case, by him swearing, he's now preventing her from being able to get remarried. So therefore he'd be chayiv there. So shall we therefore conclude that basically what's he doing? He's preventing her from being able to, I guess, get remarried, but also being able to collect her ksuba. Right? She's not, right? If he's refusing to testify that her husband's dead, she can't collect her ksuba. Now ksuba is generally collected from karka, property. So does this imply, by saying that he's chayiv if he doesn't tell anybody what he knows, does this imply that Shevuos Eidus applies to testimony about property? Right? That if you're mashbia in eid karka, that you're chayiv? It could be talking about where she wasn't actually planning to collect the ksuba from karka, because maybe she had already grabbed some metaltalin already from her husband, and she was planning to use that for a ksuba payment. So it doesn't prove that you could be mashbia Shevuos Eidus by karka. Kofar echad v'oda echad chule. Let's see if we could finish up this. That is also another long daf. Yesterday was a long daf. Today is a long daf. Shabbos mamish starts in like 10 minutes, or candle lighting's in 10 minutes. and I don't even know how much battery is left in the phone, but let's see if we could push to the end of the daf. If Levi did a Shevuos Edus, right, Shevuos She'enon Yodel Cha'edus, and Yehuda admits that he does know testimony, so we say that Levi is Chayiv, Yehuda is Potter. Hashta boze acher zeh the tarvayu ka kafir amar tarishon Chayiv v'asheni Potter kafir echad v'ode echad mibaya. In fact, the Gemara, we said that if they both deny it, Levi first and then later Yehuda is Potter and Levi is Chayiv. So, right, so meaning in that case, right, they both denied it, right? Levi denied it, and then afterwards Yehuda denied it, not toch kedei dibur. So we say Levi is Potter. No, we say Yehuda is Potter, Levi is Chayiv. And in that case, Levi can make the argument that, wait, why am I Chayiv? I mean, even if I admitted it, it wouldn't have made a difference because Yehuda also denied it. And yet we say Levi is Chayiv. Well, then certainly in a case where Levi denied it and Yehuda admitted that he knows witnesses, certainly then Levi is going to be Chayiv. It goes without saying. Well, it's talking about where actually they had both actually denied it at the same time, toch kedei dibur, but then and then one of them admitted it, toch kedei dibur. Or maybe you could say even that they didn't necessarily both do it, toch kedei dibur. 1 second. It could be actually, no, maybe they both denied it. Maybe that part doesn't even necessarily need to be toch kedei dibur, but then one of them changed his mind and said, actually, I know testimony. Toch kedei dibur changed his mind and said he knows testimony. So v'kamajmal on the toch kedei dibur kedibur dami, and it's teaching that toch kedei dibur is kedibur dami. Let me just make sure that makes sense. Even if they're not bazeh achazeh, right? So like, for example, if maybe it makes sense. So if you say the toch kedei dibur, because like, right, if let's say Levi had initially made a swear and immediately changed his mind toch kedei dibur, I don't know, maybe it doesn't necessarily matter. Whatever it is, one of them changed his mind toch kedei dibur, and it's teaching us that toch kedei dibur, ki dibur dami, kind of like we learned earlier according to Rabbi Yochanan. Now we're going to discuss this. So Bishlama l'Rav Chizde, the Mukila le'ahu, Rabbi Yosef Glili, Reish Efshel Tzamtzim, V'Seifa Yitzurk, Lashmini toch kedei dibur ki dibur dami. So I understand according to Rav Chizde, who said earlier that when it says that, when they said at the same time, so Rav Chizde said that was like Rabbi Yosef Glili, who says that they can mamish say it at the same time. And now over here, we're learning about toch kedei dibur, the Seder. Rabbi Yochanan, Reisha toch kedei dibur, Seva toch kedei dibur, Tati lamali. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that when we said earlier that they say at the same time, it doesn't mean literally at the same time, it means toch kedei dibur. So why do we have to teach about toch kedei dibur again? Well, maybe I thought that when they're both denying it, toch kedei dibur, that we could join them together to say that they both have to be in korban eidos. But maybe when one initially denied it, to then change his mind and admit that he knows testimony, maybe we wouldn't say toch kedei dibur is kedibur dami. Kamashman that even there, you say toch kedei dibur kedibur dami. And finally, hayush tekite edim kafar rishon v'achaka kafar ashniya. When you have two groups of witnesses who know testimony. The first group swore that they don't know testimony. Then the second group swore that they don't know testimony. They're both chayiv according to Shevuos ha'edus. B'shlom ha'shniya tischayiv the kafar rishona. I understand why the second group will be chayiv, because the first group had already sworn that they don't know testimony. So then when the second group the first group already swore. So when the second group swears, I mean, there's nobody else for Shimon to go to. So clearly the second group, they're the last resort, and they're swearing that they don't know testimony. They're definitely causing Shimon a loss. But El Rishona Amai, but why should the first group be chayiv? Hakai Mashniya, they could say, look, we weren't causing Shimon a loss. There was still the second group that could have testified. We didn't do anything wrong. There was still the second group to go. So Ravina says, Ravina Achav Ma'eskinon, he gon tries to shnia b'shas kfiros rishona krov b'nishosein. Says Ravina, well, it's talking about a situation that at the time that the first group swore that they don't know anything, the second group were puzzled because the two witnesses were married to sisters, which meant that they were brother-in-laws, they were puzzled, they couldn't testify. But then v'nishosein gosasos, but their wives were both deathly ill. Ma'adatemer of gosim lemisa kamasman. I may have thought that, well, maybe you would say that since most people who are deathly ill are going to end up dying, so maybe we can consider it like they're already dead, and therefore there actually aren't brother-in-laws anymore, and therefore they can testify, and therefore maybe the first group should be potter. We're saying no. In that case, the first group is chayav, because we consider the gosasos to be alive, and therefore the second group is currently pasul, and all there is right now is the first group, and therefore when the first group swears, they're going to be chayav for that. Sheesh! That was over the past 2.5 hours. I was recording Babylon Talmud for 2 of the last 2.5 hours. Woo! My brain, my voice, everything is woo! But now Shabbos Mama starts in 4 minutes, which is gewaldig. What did we even talk? We learned the whole Mishnah. We learned the Mishnah today about how exactly Shevuos Eidos works. There was a lot of important details there. Really important stuff in terms of saying Bo Vaiduni, right? Do you have to say that, and how that compares to Shevuos HaPikodon? And we talked about swearing 5 times outside of court, in addition to just how Shevuos Eidos works in general. And then we learned about the interesting. We learned about the machlokes between Tanakama and Elazar Reb Shimon about davar gorim the mamon, kimamon dami or not kimamon dami. Lots of interesting stuff. Peace out.